This is Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Let's get into it. For kingship belongs to the Lord, and he rules over the nations. That is Psalm 22:28, guys. We'll get back to that. And happy Life Month, y'all. I heard that there are some people that think that the month of June is dedicated to a completely different group of people, but no, this is the month, need I remind you, that Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey went the way of the trash bin. We got the Dobbs decision, so this is Happy Life Month. Also, just want to say I'm very thankful to our donors, guys. If you want to know how we keep the lights on around here, it's because we have donors just like you. Also, just a reminder, leave a review if you have not left us a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to this on. Please go ahead and do so. But in the most breaking news of breaking news, now, y'all didn't know that this was even happening, so it's going to not seem like something you were anticipating. But a couple of years ago, I lost my white belt. Now, for any of you jiu-jitsu people out there that are an upper belt, blue or above, you probably just gasped. You had an audible gasp as you're driving down the road or working out at the gym, because that's a very, very important belt. Because that's a white belt. It's all torn to pieces. I've got my 4 stripes that were on there. And a couple of years ago, I let some guys borrow a gi and one of my belts, I think, for a video shoot. But then I had followed up with them, and they said they gave it back. But I mean, I searched everywhere. I searched my studio. I searched my office. I searched my wife's offices and closets. And I searched our attic where we have different boxes and blah, blah, blah. I just could not find my white belt. And so I'm thinking like, man, eventually someday, if I'm blessed enough to receive my black belt, man, it's going to really suck that I only have my blue, purple, brown, and then my black. But the breaking news is I found it, guys. I was going through the attic, and there's been a box. Every time that I've looked through the attic, because I've done this every 3 or 4 months or so, there's been a box sitting there the entire time, and for whatever reason, it never connected that I could actually take my hands and open this box and look through it to see if I could find some stuff. And the funny thing was I wasn't even looking for my white belt when I found it. I was looking for something else. So, guys, I know a lot of you, maybe you feel sympathy, pain through the ether, and so you've been very, very, very nervous about that, and you didn't really know why, but I'm just here to let you know you can sleep now. You can rest easy knowing that I have found my jiu-jitsu white belt. But we've got some stuff we got to get after today, so let's talk about the quick hitters. We got a trio of quick hitters today. Major League Baseball making its record books worthless by adding the stats of players from the Negro Leagues. The Episcopal Church unveiling a redesigned logo to celebrate so-called Pride Month. And very, very famous YouTuber Miss Rachel inviting a pedophilic autogynephile, Dylan Mulvany, to appear on her popular children's show. But obviously, we have to talk about what happened last week with Donald Trump being convicted of crimes in New York, and specifically in New York City, because he became the first president in the history of the United States to be convicted of a crime. So here's how Fox News put it. Former President Trump was found guilty on all counts in his historic and unprecedented criminal trial, making him the first former president of the United States to be convicted of a crime. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg charged former President Donald Trump with 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree. Trump pleaded not guilty on all counts. Jurors found the former president guilty on all counts. So I remember being shocked by this. And in retrospect, I shouldn't have been shocked, but I just remember seeing any details about the case. And even CNN and MSNBC contributors were like, goodness gracious, there's nothing here. When the Washington Post can't tell you, yes, this is a slam dunk, Donald Trump's definitely going down for this, you know that it's basically nonsense. But they go to a district that voted like 95 or 96% in favor of Joe Biden, and you thought, okay, this is bad news for Donald Trump, but surely there's going to be at least one juror with a functioning prefrontal cortex, and that this wouldn't happen. It would be a hung jury. But this is exactly what happened. He was convicted on all the counts. I'm not going to get into all the legalese of everything, because there were reporters that have literally been following court cases for years and years and years, standing outside the courtroom, and they couldn't find the words to explain the case itself. Let's just talk a little bit about the fallout, because I do have a lot of thoughts on this, so let's dig in. This is definitely Banana Republic stuff. I mean, that's exactly what I text Mark Wayne Mullen after this thing came down, because it's like, wait a minute. This guy used to be the president. He's currently running to hold that same office again. And he's basically being targeted by the Department of Justice, so-called, of the party that is currently in power that's trying to keep him from getting that job back. This is literally third world country stuff, and it's happening here in the United States. Also, this case, as a lot of people have talked about, even people that hate Donald Trump, from front to back, it was obviously a farce. And to that end, it'll very likely be overturned. But how many years and how many millions of dollars is Donald Trump going to have to spend going through this process just to get this ridiculous conviction overturned? We'll talk about that here a little bit more in a second. But you can tell that all of this was a setup from the beginning. And if you need any evidence of that, You need to look at what happened immediately after Trump gave his first public comments following the guilty verdict. So we get the breaking news that he is found guilty. He solemnly walks out of the courtroom, walks up and addresses the media for a couple of minutes. But I'm going to show you this clip from the very, very end of his comments. And I want you to listen for the very first thing that is uttered. Again, there's tons of media there, right? Probably dozens and dozens of reporters. But for whatever reason, Donald Trump stops talking and you can only hear one voice. Let's go to the clip here.
We have a country that's in big trouble. But this was a rigged decision right from day one with a conflicted judge who should have never been allowed to try this case, never. And we will fight for our Constitution. This is long from over. Thank you very much.
Why should voters vote for a convicted felon?
So in this clip, you have Donald Trump basically saying this is long from over. The final, decision will be made by the voters in November, to which I would say you're damn right. But you hear a female journalist, of course, because this involves, hush money paid to a porn star, and Trump is apparently a misogynist and all these things. A single female reporter is allowed to blurt out a question before anyone else even makes a sound, right? And she does it without screaming over anybody, and she screams out, "Why should voters vote for a convicted felon?" And there it is. That is the entire Democratic plan for getting Joe Biden reelected. Wait, are you going to vote for a convicted felon? Mr. Trump, or any of the people that are representing Mr. Trump, why do you think the American people should throw their support and donate their money to a convicted felon, to a convicted felon, to a convicted felon? He's a convicted felon. I don't know if you know this, but he made some felonious actions and he was convicted of that. That's all we're going to hear until November. That's what they needed. That's what this trial was for. I think Alvin Bragg and everybody else working on this case knew that it was specious. They know that it's going to be overturned, but they needed the label. And they got it. Another thought I had is his sentencing has been set for just a few days before the Republican convention next month in July. Because of course it would be. Because they could have waited a little bit longer, but they need that to be the news cycle. So when the RNC says, yes, you're officially our guy, it's still going to be in the headlines that he has been sentenced. What is that sentence going to be? Not really sure. It could be jail time. He has no previous record, so we're not really sure. I'm not going to speculate here about that. Also, you can just go ahead and assume, so if you're a Trump person or if you hate him, it doesn't matter. You should go ahead and just assume that he will be found guilty on the other pending cases in Washington, D.C., in Georgia, which will be tried in the Atlanta area, and Florida. And the case that is pending in Florida is the one that actually looks the worst for him. That's the one where it looks like he actually did do some things that he shouldn't have done, and that's the worst legal case for him speaking. I would assume at this point we're going to have a clean sweep, because the New York City one was always the dumbest of all of the cases. It was always the one with the least amount of foundation, and he was convicted on every single one of every single one of the charges he was brought up, every single one. So we can just assume that's going to happen. Also, as I mentioned just a second ago, he might get prison time. He might avoid prison time, so I'm not going to speculate about that in terms of this case. But in terms of Trump's future prospects overall, I think everyone needs to wrap their minds around the fact that Donald J. Trump will eventually be put in prison. For how long, we don't know. Is he going to spend the rest of his life behind bars? I don't necessarily see that as being likely, but it's essentially a guarantee at this point that he will go into prison. Because every time it was like, you know what? I'm going to be the DA that files charges against Trump. And then I'm going to be the DA that actually gets a conviction. And then some judge is going to have to be the judge that just did what they had to do to preserve democracy and throw Donald J. Trump in prison. So we'll see if that happens before the election, but I think it's a foregone conclusion at this point. Also, do you remember me saying that Trump's legal problems would be one of the biggest reasons to support a different Republican candidate? All right, all this has been very supportive of Trump up to this point, but we've got to, see both sides of the ball here. We got to make sure that we're being intellectually honest. Because as I've said, and as you should have realized during this, run up and all of the stuff running up to the general, is even if Donald Trump is elected in November, almost the entirety of his time in office, because he'll only get 4 more years, will be spent inside of a courtroom for these initial cases, the 3 left pending, or for appeals. Have you thought about that at all? Again, you could be a huge Donald Trump fan, but this will define his presidency. Because During his first presidency, it was the Russian collusion and it was the Ukraine corruption and all these different things that they had to kind of make up. But they've got 4 bullets ready to go in the gun, right? Well, I guess they've already shot 1 with this case, but you've got the other 3 cases that will be happening over the next 4 years. And then you have all the appeals. He's not going to be able to spend his time running the country. But again, you're not just electing a president, you're electing an administration. So we'll talk more about that here in just a sec. But Republicans could have very easily during this election cycle done 2 things at the same time. Number 1, support Trump in his legal fight against the spate of specious charges. And number 2, support a conservative candidate that could have a chance at 8 years in office where they could focus solely on bettering the country. So there's kind of a thought experiment that I thought of during this, because somebody brought this up, I think it was on Twitter, but they said, if these were your only 2 options, which would you go with? Would you take 4 more years of Trump, right? So you get Trump back, followed by 8 years of Gavin Newsom. So 4 years of Trump, followed by 8 years of Gavin Newsom. Or would you take 4 more years of Biden, followed by 8 years of Ron DeSantis? Now, that's some parallel universe stuff. We don't live in that type of a universe. But that at least gives you a little bit of pause to be like, wait a minute, would it have been better if we had thrown our support behind a Ron DeSantis? Or even a Nikki Haley or a Tim Scott or just pick another person, Vivek Ramaswamy, even though he'll just basically say whatever he thinks people will want to hear. So that's an important thing that I think we all have to contend with is Republicans thought that they couldn't do both of those things at the same time, and I think that's foolish. Also, in this case, Trump is certainly a victim, but remember that this case all started with him having an affair. Now, some of you are not bothered by that. You know that Donald Trump is a mud monster, and so when you throw mud on a mud monster, they just look muddy, right? So Ben Shapiro said that before, and it's certainly the case. But we have to remember that because he went outside of his marriage and broke his vows, which he clearly has not taken seriously, he's had multiple marriages and had multiple infidelities. This all started with his own immoral actions. I think that's fair to point out here. Also, Democrats seemingly will always do the things that they accuse Republicans of doing. Oh, they're violating the norms that Democrats are literally doing everything they can to violate. Oh, they're trying to attack the justice system while the Democrats are literally attacking and using criminal warfare against one of their rival candidates, right? So that's always something to think through. Additionally, this could obviously backfire on the Democrats because this is likely the most motivated and unified that Republicans have been about electing someone potentially ever. The first day, I believe, after the conviction came out, Donald Trump raised $53 million in donations for his reelect effort in one day. For comparison, that was more than the entire previous month that Joe Biden raised. $53 million in a day. And there are people that are talking about making, 6, 7, 8, and even 9-figure donations to try to get him back in the White House. Another thing that's been brought up in all of this is you've got to start to wonder if red state Republican governors and district attorneys are going to start playing this same game. Now, there are people that are calling for that. There are conservative commentators or even elected members of Congress that are calling for red state governors and DAs to start doing this exact same thing. And I got to tell you, I've been thinking through this over the last week. I'm still conflicted about that because part of me wants to say, okay, FAFO, if this is what y'all are going to do, watch us play the exact same game. But if we do that tit for tat thing, I feel like we're going to reach the demise of our country even faster. I feel like that's something that we're just going to see that's going to really deteriorate what we're seeing. And maybe that's something that we can preserve and that we can save, and maybe we can't. But I would caution you to just hop on board and be like, yes, I think that my governor and DA should do that. And then also, this is kind of a little bit of a shift here, but I've seen a lot of posts from people that they're talking about Jesus and Donald Trump and comparing them and the plight of these people or Trump and the apostles or the first century martyrs of the church. So this is just my message. Please, 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 conservatives, Christians, stop comparing the plight of Donald Trump to the plight of Jesus and the apostles. You're making us look ridiculous. You're making us look foolish. And also, side note, I posted one of these memes on Instagram and on Facebook, and in the caption, I literally said how much I hate this, but people apparently can't read, and so they only read the meme and went right to my comment section and started lighting me on fire for literally doing the thing I was castigating. So, guys, just make sure you're paying attention out there, because people are like, I'm unfollowing you. It's like, did you read the caption? Oh, whoops, sorry. Also, to continue my commentary on this, I still maintain that the best candidate for the Republicans, the best one that they could have nominated this go around, was Ron DeSantis, the greatest governor in America right now. But even though my vote won't really count in the red state of Oklahoma, where every single county will vote red and vote for Donald Trump, I would crawl over broken glass to vote for Trump at this point. Whereas before, I just would have been plugging my nose to do so. Because I know people have plugged their nose in 2016, plugged their nose again in 2020, and we're planning on plugging their nose again in 2024. I don't think that category exists anymore. I think people that were on the fence are just like, yeah, I guess I'll vote for him. I think they're going to be literally going out of their way to do so this time because of what we're seeing with this lawfare that's being waged. And you can obviously see the name of today's episode. I really don't think it's hyperbole at this point, or hyperbolic, to say that a vote for Donald Trump in November of this year is a vote to preserve our constitutional republic. Because we're not a democracy. The 51% do not rule the 49%. But in a constitutional republic, there have to be norms that are observed. And I think the Democrats, to a degree, have crossed the Rubicon. And so I'll talk more about I'll just go ahead and talk about it. I don't think our constitutional republic is dead. Some people have already, had the funeral for our constitutional republic. We're certainly not dead, but the constitutional republic here in the U.S. does seem to be on life support. That something like this could happen, that the mainstream media would be aiding in this, it does not point to a safe and healthy society. It points to the exact opposite. But as I was talking with Matt Chandler here recently, we were talking about a series he's going to be doing this fall. He's going to be kind of wading into the election and kind of overall politics and things like that. And he made a comment, which is obviously true, but I think most of us miss. And that's when you're voting for president, you're not electing one person. You're technically electing thousands of people. You're electing a huge chunk of the federal government, at least the one that, move the levers and gears of power in Washington, D.C. And so you may hate Donald Trump, but like the things that came out of his administration. Because that was the thing, is while the mainstream media and people on the left were always obsessed with whatever he was posting on Twitter at the time before he got kicked off, it was like, but man, things seem to be running really well. Other countries seem to be behaving. Terrorists seem to be behaving because they're afraid of him dropping the mother of all bombs on them, which he had done. You had people paying attention. The markets were going well. Inflation was down. And so it's like, you may not like him. You may think he's a gross human. You may think he's a deeply immoral person that doesn't deserve the office. And I think there's some merit to those arguments. But you're not just electing one man. So I don't care about this, would you have a beer with the guy thing? Because that was like a thing during the Obama administration. It's like, I'd like to have a beer with that guy. I don't really like Mitt Romney. It's like, okay, well, Barack Obama is a left-wing zealot. So he might be cool to have a beer with, but you don't want him at the levers of power. And the last thing here before I get to my final point is, regardless of what happens in November during the election, there's one thing that I can essentially assure you of. This country will burn. Now, what I'm not saying is that it should. So anyone that's going to clip this later, I've got to make sure I put that in there for context. But I remember in 2020, I was in Austin, Texas, the day of the election and the week of the election. And they were boarding up all the businesses in downtown Austin. And all my liberal friends, like, they weren't even really paying attention to it. They were just like, oh, this is really inconvenient. And I just was like, why do you think they're boarding this up? And they're like, well, I'm not exactly sure. I'm like, well, it's not just in case Joe Biden gets elected. Like, you're not going to have a whole bunch of Trump supporters throwing Molotov cocktails through Starbucks windows, right? And then you dummy moron dorks, decided to storm the Capitol, but that's not what we're talking about today. But if Donald Trump is reelected, I feel like the Black Lives Matter riots that we saw, the $2 billion worth of damage and all the people killed and all the people injured, I think that'll look like a picnic. And I hate saying that, and I know I'm a little bit more pessimistic in my presentation and in my nature, but that's what I honestly believe. But if Joe Biden's elected, especially with all the polls showing right now that the odds of that happening being so low, I think simple-minded people that are very easily persuaded by, well, this election was stolen. Well, what evidence do you have that shows that the election could be overturned if this evidence were to come out? Well, we don't care about that. I think either way, we're going to have some low IQ, frustrated individuals that are going to absolutely destroy this country from the fabric out. And so I'm not really excited about that, but I do think that that's going to happen. But I do have one big point of solace before we wrap up my commentary here on Donald Trump. God doesn't need America. Okay? Some of you are a little bit taken aback by that, but it's breaking news for you then. God doesn't need America. He's in control even when we're out of control. So let's say Donald Trump or Joe Biden's, elected, and it's either the left or the right that's, destroying things and burning things and rioting and whatever that is. Is God still not God? You think God's going to be shocked by all that? Do you think that Christianity will topple because America topples? Because I got to tell you, it's probably seemingly going to happen in my lifetime, but we're not going to be the dominant hegemonic power in this world, and perhaps not for very much longer. That's not going to bother God any. Go back to the scripture I used from the beginning, Psalm 22:28. For kingship belongs to the Lord, and he rules over the nations. And just this weekend, my pastor used this when he was talking about Acts 17. He did Acts 17:26 and 27. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place, that they should seek God and perhaps feel their way toward him and find him. So as a nation, we're no longer doing that. We're certainly no longer doing that. We have, second Rubicon reference, we've crossed the Rubicon in terms of this country. We are a post-Christian culture, not as post-Christian as maybe the UK or Canada, but we're certainly post-Christian at this point. I don't know that there's a way beyond an act of God to turn that around and move that in the opposite direction, but I can just tell you, if your guy doesn't win in November, it's fine. I'm not going to like it. And I will certainly talk about the things in detail and specifically that I don't like about that scenario, but we're all going to be okay. God's going to be in control. Hey guys, real quick. If you're anything like me, you are constantly on the lookout for high quality products that are actually made here in America by American hands. The problem is that a lot of American companies have outsourced their labor overseas, so it's an American company, but it's supporting people that don't live here. So I've always wanted to partner with an American company that prioritizes America, American workers, and making all of their materials here in this country. That's why I want to remind you that we are partnered with Origin. Origin is an apparel company based in Maine, and they are focused on getting as much manufacturing back to the United States as they can possibly do. What do they make? They make the best jiu-jitsu gis on the planet, and these are the only jiu-jitsu gis that are made completely in America. They also make jeans. Yes, they're stretchy and awesome. They also make amazing hunting gear, and I know you guys love your Kuiu and your Sitka, but those companies use overseas labor, and they don't do that to help you guys out. They do that to increase their profit margins. Origin also makes boots and work boots, and yes, that does include steel-toe boots. And in the fall of last year, they launched a line of everyday clothing. Their Versa pants are their everyday pants, and they are just especially phenomenal. They also make other outdoor clothes and workout clothes, and they're launching new apparel stuff all the time. If you haven't already, you need to check them out and support a company that supports America and America's workers. Try Origin out today by going to www.originusa.com. That's originusa.com. Use the promo code Undaunted to get 10% off of your order. Again, that's originusa.com. Promo code Undaunted to get 10% off of your order. All right, guys, let's hit our first quick hitter. Major League Baseball making its record books worthless by adding in the stats of players from the Negro Leagues. So this is according to Major League Baseball on May the 29th. Major League Baseball's embrace of the Negro Leagues is now recognized in the record book, resulting in new-look leaderboards fronted in several prominent places by Hall of Famer Josh Gibson and an overdue appreciation of many other black stars. Following the 2020 announcement that 7 different Negro Leagues from 1920 to 1948 would be recognized as major leagues, MLB announced Wednesday that it has followed the recommendations of the Independent Negro League Statistical Review Committee in absorbing the available Negro Leagues numbers into the official historical record. So here is the most basic and practical reason why this is so dumb. Because none of these men that are now going to be included in the MLB record books played in MLB. None of them played in Major League Baseball. They quite literally played in a different league. Now, I can say that it is very easy for us to employ chronological snobbery and claim that, well, these players should have been able to play in MLB all along and it was racist to exclude them. And to that I would say, yeah, I completely agree with you. I wish we could go back and I wish that that could be different. But that doesn't change the fact that these men didn't play in this league. Again, I wish they would have. Do you realize how awesome it would have been if we could have watched Satchel Paige pitch against Babe Ruth? Babe Ruth was a little older than Satchel, so Satchel would have been a younger pitcher going against an older Babe Ruth. But guys, we don't live in a parallel universe where that happened, okay? So we can't just say that that happened and pretend that we know which way it would have gone. So let's just do a thought experiment here. So most of the black players that played in the Negro Leagues during the 20s, 30s, and 40s did not play in the Nippon Professional League. So that is Japan's top pro baseball league that started back in the 1940s. That is, for all intents and purposes, the second best major baseball league in the world. Okay? That's in Japan. How do you think the NPL today would respond if there was a public outcry that Negro Leagues players should be included in their record books? Like, it wouldn't even be considered, right? So why MLBs? Because there weren't black players allowed to play in that league for a long time, but then there also were black players that were allowed to play in that league from the beginning as well. Do we just insert these Negro Leagues players into all these different other record books and stat collectors? I don't get it. So that's the main reason why this is dumb, but there are several more reasons why this is dumb. Here's one. There was no such thing as the Negro League. It was the Negro Leagues with an S. And as the MLB report said, there were 7 different Negro Leagues from 1920 to 1948. So are you trying to tell me that all of those leagues were filled with the top black players the entire time? Because at different points, there have been different rival leagues. The NBA had some rivalry leagues, and then there was like the USFL and the NFL and all these different things. And at those times, you couldn't guarantee that one league had all the best players. Same thing you can say in modern fighting. You can make an argument that the majority of the best fighters fight for the UFC, but there are fighters in Bellator in one championship that could come to the UFC and potentially be champions, right? So you can say most of the best players are in one area, but you can't say that all of them were. And so this wasn't a singular league of people that were kept out. It was a singular race of people that were kept out that were spread across multiple different leagues. Another reason why this is dumb is because inherent in this move by Major League Baseball is the massive assumption that these players somehow would have performed exactly the same in MLB as they had done in the Negro Leagues. We can't assume one way or the other that they would have been done better or worse. They are assuming that they would have done exactly as well, which is foolish. So I guess how the argument goes is that these Negro Leagues players that were kept from playing in Major League Baseball, which again, they shouldn't have been, but ultimately were, but if they had, then they would have performed the exact same way. And it's to what authority or to what evidence are you pointing to substantiate that claim? You would need at least one parallel universe and a time machine to even begin to prove something so preposterous. And yet that's what MLB is going for. Another reason why this is so stupid is because, and this hurts me as a baseball fan, as a baseball guy, I love the league. MLB stats are more revered than any other professional league's stats. No one's really talking about these all-time records in the NBA or the NHL or the NFL or MLS or any of those other things like they do about MLB. So let's talk about Josh Gibson. So that was mentioned in the article by MLB. Josh Gibson was arguably the greatest position player in the history of the Negro Leagues. That's fine, okay? Well, very famously, if you're a baseball fan, you know that Ty Cobb has the highest career batting average at .367. But not anymore. Josh Gibson is at the top now with a batting average career of .372. Very famously, Ted Williams and Babe Ruth had preposterously high career on-base percentages, right? So Ted Williams was at .482 and Babe Ruth was at .474. But now, Josh Gibson is third all-time at .459. Also very famously, Babe Ruth had the highest career slugging percentage. So slugging is this formula. It's 1 times the number of singles plus 2 times the number of doubles, plus 3 times the number of triples, plus 4 times the number of home runs, all divided by the number of at-bats, okay? And so the higher the number, the higher of a propensity you have for power hitting. So doubles, triples, and home runs, essentially. Babe Ruth's career slugging was .690. But now Josh Gibson is the slugging career king with a slugging percentage of .718. And very famously, career OPS, so that's the stat of all stat for baseball nerds. That's a combo of slugging percentage and on base percentage. Josh Gibson now tops Babe Ruth with a career OPS of 1,177 to Babe's 1,164. So it's just ridiculous. It's something that we shouldn't take seriously. And I think all this is similar to how no one actually believes and actually sees Barry Bonds as the career home run king. In their eyes, it's still Hank Aaron because Barry Bonds is a non-repentant cheater. Same as no one sees Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa as the single-season home run kings. That crown now belongs to Aaron Judge, who hit 62 home runs back in 2022 when he took the crown from Roger Maris, who hit 61 home runs back in 1961. But here's the difference. At least Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa played in Major League Baseball. They're all cheaters, but at least they played in the league. So I guess the other thing that's concerning about all this and what makes it especially stupid is that it literally can't do what MLB is claiming that it's doing. Again, from the article, it says, why are the Negro Leagues being added to the historical record? Essentially to right a wrong. That's said a little bit later than the snippet that I read earlier. So Major League Baseball literally thinks they're doing something moral here, that they are righting a historical wrong, to which I would say, wait a minute, did we just go back in time, resurrect all those players, and put them all in the same league? Because just like we can't assume the Negro Leagues players would have done any better or any worse against the MLB competition, the same is true about the MLB competition. How well would Babe Ruth have hit off of MLB pitchers and Negro Leagues pitchers? We can't know that. And so if you're MLB, why would you make this grandiose, all-consuming, all-sweeping statement that essentially you're righting a wrong? I just don't really see how you can do that. Excuse me, but my big takeaway on this one is the record books are somewhere now between hilarious and worthless. Not because the players that are added to these lists were hilarious or worthless. No, it's because it's a form of selective diversity, equity, and inclusion. So what do I mean by selective DEI? Because it's only including the Negro Leagues, which is bigoted and exclusionary against other baseball leagues that have existed. I have some questions for MLB. What about the Nippon Professional League? That's Japan's version of Major League Baseball. What about the KBO League? That's South Korea's version of MLB. What about the Chinese Professional Baseball League? That's Taiwan's version of MLB. What about the China National Baseball League? That's China's version of MLB. And what about the Philippine Baseball League? The Philippines' version of MLB. Why, MLB, are you so racist and exclusionary against Asians? Also, what about all of the Latin American and the pro leagues that are in Latin America? Like, you got Brazil, Colombia, Cuba, Curacao, Dominican Republic, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, Puerto Rico, Venezuela. MLB, why are you so racist and exclusionary of Latinx players and leagues? What about all the European pro leagues in Austria, Belarus, Croatia, Czech Republic, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Hungary, Ireland, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Netherlands, Poland, Portugal, Russia, Spain, Sweden, and the UK? MLB, can you please explain to me why you're so racist and exclusionary of an entire continent of people? What about all the pro leagues in majority Muslim countries like Iran, Malaysia, and Indonesia? MLB, why are you so Islamophobic? What about the oceanic pro leagues that we see in Australia? Why is MLB so racist and exclusionary against a country that used to just be a penal colony? Huh? They're people too. Why are they so exclusionary of the independent league? Why are they so bigoted against dudes that couldn't cut it in MLB? I gotta tell you, sounds pretty ableist. Why are they excluding Little League stats and Little League players, huh? Why are you being so ageist, MLB? Just because they're 12 years old doesn't mean they shouldn't be included. And maybe, and most importantly, what about the Savannah Bananas? They're essentially the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball. What's MLB's big hang up against fruit? Like, what's the big deal here? I mean, come on, Major League Baseball. If you're going to go for diversity, equity, and inclusion in your record books, go all the way. I mean, it's Pride Month, for goodness sakes. Take some chances because, you're going to basically be completely out of the news cycle during this month because everything's going to be about that. Why not take those chances? But here's the thing. MLB's not going to do that because, of course, they're not going to do that. But if they do that, which is not going to happen, the record books just won't be recognizable. We might as well just get rid of them. Because the new home run king, which is the most famous stat in all of baseball, perhaps in all of sports, it wouldn't be Hank Aaron anymore. It would be Sadaharu Oh, because he hit 868 home runs in the Japanese league. And that would just be one of many position player and pitching records that would fall. And so as a baseball guy, I find this to be incredibly vapid. This would not be happening if we were not in our current cultural moment. And it does nothing to unite people. It does nothing to unite histories. And it certainly doesn't right any historical wrongs. It's just so unbelievably stupid. All right, let's get to the next quick hitter here. The Episcopal Church unveiling a redesigned logo to celebrate Pride Month. So this is actually according to the Episcopal Church's website at episcopalchurch.org. In affirmation and celebration of the Episcopal Church's LGBTQ plus members, the Office of Communication is pleased to unveil a new Pride Shield available online for church-wide use. The design retains the upper left blue corner of the Episcopal Church's shield logo and incorporates elements of the traditional Pride flag as well as the Progress Pride flag and Philadelphia Pride flag. In their use of black, brown, pink, and light blue diagonal lines, the latter two flags represent intersectional progress in acknowledging people who are often overlooked by the mainstream LGBTQ plus movement, communities of color, the transgender community, and the many thousands harmed by anti-LGBTQ plus policy, from those who lost their lives in the AIDS crisis of the 1980s and 1990s to those still disproportionately impacted today. So let's go ahead and put this monstrosity up on the screen here. So to my wonderful editor, Landon, look at this thing. Look at this ridiculous design. That is literally what you will see as you're walking into your so-called Episcopal Church. Excuse me. We're just going to go right to the big takeaway on this one. The Episcopal Church is a church in name only and has been for a long time, and we should actively be rooting for their overall demise. This is what I want to have happen. I want all these Episcopal churches essentially to run out of business, and I want their church buildings to be taken over by good, healthy congregations of people that are being led by strong pastors that are expositing the word, that are helping disciple their sheep, that are encouraging families to catechize, encouraging headship and complementarianism. That's exactly what I hope that happens. Because a lot of these church buildings, they can't be retrofitted to be a Pizza Hut or a grocery store. They kind of have to be churches. And so I don't think it's good to point these things out, but yes, I'm actively asking and hoping that these churches, their doors close, because they have so far strayed from any type of recognizable biblical ethic that if they take liberties with this, what else are they going to take liberties with as it pertains to a Christian virtue or morality? So we should absolutely root for their doors to close. All right, the last one here we're talking about today is YouTuber Miss Rachel inviting pedophilic autogynephile Dylan Mulvany to appear on her popular children's show. So most of you know what pedophilia is. Maybe you haven't heard of autogynephilia, but autogynephilia is where a man, an adult male, looks at himself in the mirror dressed up as a woman and is sexually aroused by the sight of himself dressed up as a woman. That's an autogynephile. A pedophilic autogynephile is Dylan Mulvany, because he didn't say, oh, it's day 10 of womanhood, day 100 of womanhood, 1 year of womanhood. It was of girlhood. So this is an adult male that is aroused by seeing himself dress up, for the most part, as a prepubescent girl. So there you go. Now we got Miss Rachel. So Miss Rachel has a YouTube channel that had, 9 million subscribers. She's like your quintessential elementary school teacher. She has a show that appeals to a target demographic of like 2 to 4-year-olds, 2 to 5-year-olds, right? So songs for littles are a big thing, sing-alongs, and it's incredibly annoying, but was seemingly innocuous. So our youngest child, Eli, especially liked her and would sing along and clap along and do the hand motions and all that type of stuff. And most of the stuff seemed fine. Again, Definitely annoying. Nothing can be as good as Bluey. Most stuff is annoying. But this is according to Not the Bee, which is the Babylon Bee's like actual news side of what they do. Yeah, Miss Rachel, who has nearly 10 million YouTube subscribers and produces a cute little sing-songs show for toddlers, has decided to Bud Light herself. A new report says Miss Rachel decided to pop into a Mulvany live stream in 2023 to invite the trans icon onto her children's show. Miss Rachel's message to Mulvany: sometime when you're in NYC, you should be on our show. Songs for Littles. We love you and we love your singing. So that kind of went under the radar, but Dylan Mulvany's doing a TikTok live thing, and she just pops in and leaves that comment, which is obviously incredibly problematic because that means she would be bringing on somebody who is propagating queer ideology for children. Again, her show is appealing to 2, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, right? And ostensibly to their parents. You would be bringing this thing, this guy that is, dressing up in woman face and introducing him to the audience. And I can guarantee you, because this hadn't happened, at least it hasn't happened yet, I can guarantee you he would be introduced as a trans woman. He wouldn't just be introduced as Dylan Mulvany, person that can sing. He would be introduced as a trans woman. And there you go, 2, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, trans woman would now be in their lexicon. Isn't that so interesting and cute? But then, to apparently not be outdone by her own self, Miss Rachel decided to post this video on her social media accounts at the very beginning of so-called Pride Month.
Happy Pride to all of our wonderful families and friends. This month and every month I celebrate you. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're exactly who you are. To those who are going to comment they can't watch the show anymore because of the support, no worries and much love your way. God bless. I am not chasing fame or views. I'm standing strong in love.
So you see what she does there? That was actually very, very astute and very shrewd of her. She's like, look, if you can't listen to our show anymore, I get it. But you know what? I'm just going to be about love. God bless. I'm just about love, which inherently means that if you're not pro her stance, or you don't think her way as it pertains to the LGBTQ, the chosen LGBTQ lifestyle that people are leading, then you're not on the side of love and inherently not on the side of God either. I'd be like, you're really reading into that a little bit, Kyle, aren't you? Well, no, it's all right there. Like she was doing it in her Miss Rachel language, but it was all right there in the clip. And so she's even acknowledging right from the beginning that she knows what she's doing. Because I always wonder, like Bud Light, are you that stupid? Do you think it's a bunch of right or left-wing liberals on the Upper West Side of Manhattan that are drinking your product? Or is it a lot of right-wing people that are a little bit more conservative in their bent, at least right-leaning? Same thing with Miss Rachel. Like, certainly there are liberal parents that allow their kids to listen to that, but there are tons of conservative parents that just want something clean that their kid can watch on YouTube while they're, folding laundry or just doing something else so that they can occupy the children. And she acknowledges that she knows people are going to be mad, but I don't think she really realized what was coming for her. Because at the same time she posted that video, that's when people had found the invitation for her, for Dylan Mulvany. And then she started to feel a little bit of backlash, which, who could have guessed that you would feel that backlash? So she actually posted a follow-up video. I believe it was earlier this week. So let's go to that clip here.
I've shared prayers on here before and said, God bless. And that's because my faith is really important to me. And it's also one reason why I love every neighbor. In Matthew 22, a religious teacher asked Jesus, what's the most important commandment? And Jesus says to love God and to love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commandments. There's no greater commandments than these. I believe it's mentioned 8 times, love your neighbor. So yes, everyone belongs, everyone's welcome, everyone is treated with empathy and respect. It doesn't say love every neighbor except. There are so many reasons I stand strong in love. I stand with everyone. That's who I am. And the love back and the God bless if you disagree is genuine.
She stands with everyone. Everyone, I assume she means everyone. I wonder, does she stand with pedophiles? Miss Rachel, you stand with everyone. Do you stand with people that have active sexual relationships, adults have sexual relationships with children? Do you stand with that? What about people that beat their spouses? Do you stand with those people? Do you love those people regardless of what they do? I would assume that she would say, no, she's not for that. But when you do this love is everything bit, that's what you're communicating. She says her faith is important to her, right? But apparently what God has to say is not important to her. So when people say my faith is important to me, some people go, oh, isn't that so cute? It's like, well, no, I have more questions. What faith? What faith are you subscribing to? What truths therein are you espousing to your public audience, in her case, which is enormous? Because you want to talk about God, but then you talk about Jesus, but you only want to talk about the love parts about Jesus, but you seem to be ignoring the fact that Jesus did not tolerate sin. Tolerance is not a virtue that we find in the Bible. Jesus was always very tender with the heart of the sinner, while also in very non-tender ways calling out the sin of the individual. The woman caught in adultery was not like, hey, just, don't worry about all these mean pants people. You just go on and live your life. I love you regardless. It's like, look, I don't condemn you, but go and sin no more. I don't condemn you, but go and sin no more. Stop what you're doing. This sin hurts the heart of God. Basically, he's telling her, hey, I'm going to have to pay for this at some point. Could you please stop it? And this is kind of this love cult that we have that's like, look, aren't Christians called to love everyone? It's like, well, where do you get that idea? Because these are typically non-Christians, people that don't read the Bible, don't go to church, saying these things to Christians, and Christians get all like flustered and they don't know how to respond. It's like, it's not loving to allow people to do things that are destructive to themselves. That's not loving. You're not loving your child if they're running towards traffic to just be like, oh, you know what? I don't want to stop them and I don't want to stop their curiosity. And I would hate to raise my voice because that would be mean and just let them take off towards traffic. Come on. Nobody would do that. But there's this idea that if you tell someone, look, your chosen way of acting out sexually, your chosen gender identity, whatever that is somehow a good thing for you is foolish. And it's actually the opposite of love. You can't love someone and do that. You're actually hating them if you do that. Because culture has it opposite. If I tell a homosexual person or someone that has a same-sex attraction that them acting out in a same-sex way sexually is wrong and immoral and they shouldn't do it, I'm seen as hating them. But that is a message of love. That is 100% a message of love. I'm trying to get them to understand that that particular choice hurts the heart of God. So I have this question for Miss Rachel or people that would be defending her right now. If God loved all of us exactly as we are, then why did he have to send Jesus to die in our place? To pay our sin debt so that we could be in his presence? Why would he have to do that? If he created us exactly as we are, and if we have no other choice in the matter but to operate based on of our proclivities, then why in the world would Jesus have to do his ministry and perform, be the sacrificial lamb that God takes out to pay for sin? Like, why would that have to happen, Miss Rachel? She probably wouldn't have a fully formed opinion on that. Again, guys, don't get your theology from people that teach preschool on YouTube. Because this is somebody that has apparently gotten some Christianese language in her life, but doesn't actually understand the narrative of the gospel. Because the truth is that we are depraved and dead in our sins and trespasses, and we have to be saved. How are we saved? We repent and we put our faith in Christ. That's how we get the propitiation of our sin debt, right? Payment that satisfies. Thank you, Joby. Like, that's where we get this whole concept. Like, this concept of love everybody no matter what their decisions are is foolish. Even I don't like this whole idea of, love the sinner but hate the sin. It's like, as R.C. Sproul pointed out, God doesn't send sin to hell. He sends people to hell. He sends sinners to hell. So my big takeaway on this one is, if you don't draw a line somewhere, you will likely never draw a line anywhere. There are a lot of parents that just like, I get it, guys. You work for a living. You wake up early, you try to sneak in a workout, you get ready, you go to work, you work your 8, 10, 12-hour shift, you come home, you don't really have time to just sit in the news cycle and see what people are freaking out about on Twitter, and you got to take care of your family, you got to go to gymnastics and to baseball, and then you got to at some point try to sit down and love your wife, and I get it. You don't have all the time in the world to deal with these things, and so you just kind of default to, oh, it's on YouTube, she seems innocuous enough, play. But we have to draw lines, people. If you're concerned about these nefarious ideologies infiltrating your children. First of all, get them out of the public school system, the Roman schools. You got to get them out of that. Put them in vetted private Christian school or homeschool them. But also, you have to be careful what you're allowing them to see. If they are going over to another kid's house, you need to have a lot of discussions with those parents. Hey, what kind of access to the internet does everybody in the household have? Hey, what are the television shows that you allow your children to watch? Is there an older brother that lives in the house that watches porn? Is there a pit bull in the house that might maul my kid to death because he just decides he wants to do that? Is there a pool in the backyard? Does everybody know how to swim? You need to ask questions. This is just one of those questions that you have to have, and you have to draw the line. Because some people didn't want to draw the line. They're like, yeah, I know Starbucks gives a lot of money to Planned Parenthood, but it's convenient. It's on my way to the office. So you don't draw a line. I know that Disney has, these guys dressed up as Disney princesses, and they're presenting themselves in front of these children and confusing them and blurring the gender lines. But Disneyland is so much fun for my family. You know what? Target was specifically targeting, Christians and conservatives with their whole bathroom policy nonsense, and then putting out their big pride displays and, having satanic artists create some of the designs that are going to be for sale. But you know what? I really like this very particular brand of lipstick or salsa that they sell, so I'm going to keep going to Target. Guys, you got to draw a line somewhere. I keep telling you about Netflix. The Cuties movie that is basically pornography bait for pedophiles is still on Netflix as far as I know, and you're still paying them. A portion of your money is going to hold up, market, and create content that allows for pedophiles to jerk off thinking about prepubescent girls. But some of your favorite shows and comedians have specials on Netflix, so you have to have Netflix. Because here's the thing, guys. Just by inviting Dylan Mulvany on her show, Miss Rachel is legitimizing radical gender theory and is attempting to normalize it to toddlers just by extending the invitation. But then she doubles down with her first video, and then a couple days later, she triples down. She does not care about your children. Some of you think, oh, she's Miss Rachel, she's sweet and she's fine and she's whatever. She is not their parent. You are. It is your job and your duty to protect your children from things like radical gender theory. And if you just put them in front of the television and don't pay attention to what they're seeing, and then you're shocked that they end up having reprehensible worldviews that are anathema to what you believe, I'm shocked that you're shocked. Guys, we got to get it together. All right, guys, before I let you go, we're going to do a quick resilience boost. At Undaunted.Life, our mission is equipping men to push back darkness with content that forges spiritual, mental, and physical resilience. Guys, today, we've got our donation link. Check that out. And then I've got a link to everything we talked about in the show notes. Appreciate your attention today. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a positive 5-star review. If you want me to come speak live at your event or on your podcast, just shoot me an email to info@undaunted.life. That's info@undaunted.life. Follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook, and check out our website for everything else, including how to donate to keep more content like this coming your way. Just go to www.undaunted.life. And as always, we want to thank the band Holy Name for allowing us to use their music for our content. The music on this podcast is their song Perpetua, which is off their self-titled debut album on Face Down Records. The links are in the description. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Remember, keep pushing back darkness, keep forging spiritual, mental, and physical resilience, keep seeking the Lion of Judah.